What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations. 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And also once a month, I host Conversations for Fathers and Dads that is co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization, and Dove Men Care. And as always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And most Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, like we're doing today on November 8th, I host a conversation called Black Canada Talking. And that's where we get Black Canadians to give their takes and POVs on subjects that they think are important and they want to talk about. And this is a special edition of Black Canada Talking today, because unless you've had your head in the sand, there's been something going on in America over the last few days that have been getting people's interest, stressing people out. People are chatting, debating, saying, I can't take any more of this. Of course, it is the American election. At the present time, Joe Biden has been enlisted as president-elect, and Kamala Harris is listed as vice president-elect. We have our panelists from Black Canada Talking. Our regular panelists are going to be joining us in just a second. And then a little bit during our conversation, we have two friends from the United States, Aisha K. Staggers and Jill Jones. They are regular contributors to the Dr. Vibe Show weekly, giving their takes on political stuff going on in the U.S., and they're going to join us all. So we have a truly Canadian and American conversation happening tonight. So without further ado, let's get our panelists on from Canada. First up, we have Elle Jones. What is going on, Elle?
Hi, Dr. Vibe. I remembered to come off mute this time in my first comment.
Well done.
Good to be back so quickly again and to be back on the show. And I'm really looking forward, especially to these cross-border conversations, because as we know, everything that happens in America has an outsized influence on the world. So, yeah, as you say, blessed, highly favored, and a magnet for miracles.
Bang, and a solution for someone's problem. You is. Next up, we have Mr. Warren Clarke from Ottawa. Mr. Warren Clarke, how are we? You're on mute, Warren.
Didn't practice properly this week.
Come on now. Like you're on like every few weeks, Ben. Now you got that down pat.
Yes, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being a part of this segment, as usual, as always. Looking forward to this deep conversation and learning, but also teaching. And yeah, let's go through it together.
Excellent. And finally, but not lastly, in our books, Cesar, come on in, my brother. How you doing?
Dr. Vibe, Elle, Warren, BIA Media. Thanks for having me. I'm okay. Quite a week it's been from addressing police culture in a police service outside of Ottawa to basically being in the news, Citizen, CBC, etc., for addressing leadership, notably Black leadership in power relations such as police. We must be accountable. Bienvenue tout le monde. On va avoir une émission spéciale sur le Canada, les trois panélistes noirs, mais aussi des panélistes américains pour adresser les élections américaines. C'est une émission spéciale aujourd'hui.
Wonderful. So, folks, we're going to get right into it because we got some friends coming at the bottom of the hour. So let's set it off first. My first conversation piece for the panelists, and it's going to go to Elle first. What were your feelings Tuesday night, the night of the election, when you saw results coming in? Elle, what were your thoughts?
I mean, I think everybody had the same initial reaction, which was like, what the F, as especially as the results are coming in so late and people going to sleep. In retrospect, of course, we all know it's just the mail-in ballots that clearly were going to break so highly Democratic because of who believes in COVID and who got their ballots in early. But in that temporary unbalance caused, I think everybody had flashbacks to 2016 and was like, are we serious right now? And especially, of course, Florida, where in particular there are questions about, the ethnic vote, as they call it. So like, the Latino and even partially like the Black vote that was flipping things in ways that people didn't expect. So I think everybody had this kind of like initial traumatized experience. I've been asking the question seriously all week, like, is America still a first world nation? You know, like, is it a developed nation in any kind of way? Certainly, if this was any of our countries, we know that, first of all, they'd have been election observers in the first place, given the amount of pre-election chaos, attempts to destabilize the elections, the kind of militia violence we saw in Michigan directed against Governor Whitmer. We know if this was happening in like Trinidad or Ghana or something, that there'd already been a UN squad there. And I continue to ask the question, like, is this country still really like a functioning democracy? Like, is it really a functioning developed country in any kind of way? Which is sort of my take on what we're seeing happen. You know, just the ongoing, if we think this is over, it ain't over. So, you know, Tuesday night, I think a lot of us are like, are they seriously going to reelect Trump? And then everybody calmed down kind of in the morning, where it was clear that this was about the ballot counting. And then as it went through the week, I think everyone was like, how's this taking so long? Like, what's up with Nevada? Like, why can't you guys just count ballots? And then you started seeing, you know, like people show up and trying to bust in, and all this chaos that Trump is causing, with people being outside the polling stations and trying to observe and stand over people's shoulders, and, you know, this chaos. And if we think that's done, I think it's just getting started. So on the one hand, you know, we can all like dance to "You're Gonna Lose Your Job" and be happy that at least temporarily, you know, something's happy. He ain't going nowhere. His base is a huge part of America. It's a huge part of the Republican Party. You're not going to be able to have any path into leadership in the Republican Party without going through Trump. He has children, you know, that quite well could be running. So we're going to be dealing with this for a long time. So I think we went from, ugh, what the hell, to, oh, relief, to what the hell, to temporary euphoria, and now I'm back to like, what the hell. So I guess that's my emotional landscape.
Okay, Warren Clarke.
Look at me and not understanding my mute etiquette. You know, how did I feel? I don't know how I felt, to be honest with you. Like, I was, you know, busy in my own little world. I knew this was a huge event for most of the world, not only America, in terms of, especially what's been going on in the last 4 years, and people also feeling this is the opportunity for Trump to be ousted out of office. Why I say I don't know how I feel, because, you know, I've been speaking to a lot of folks in America for the last 2 years. And, you know, the common theme is, well, we got to pick one of the lesser two evils, right? And, you know, that in itself has made me think, well, what is the right choice for America? You know, is it not having a Donald Trump for these folks, or is it having a Biden and just having to deal with whatever options they have to deal with? And, you know, it comes to show that their options are limited, right? And because they don't have a true option, which actually speaks to true liberation, you know, it's very problematic. You know, a lot of people weren't happy with Kamala Harris prior to her being vice president elect. You know, if we, you know, think about some of the narratives that have been happening coming out of the United States about Kamala Harris, the Black American community was totally not on her side. You know, especially with her her judgment, our practice in the justice system. So, you know, when it comes to like what the right choice is, the right choice, you know, I think for many people was just get rid of Trump, and we'll take whatever worst option is, because there's nothing worse than Trump. I also say that, you know, I agree with Elle. I think this is not the end of Trump. I think we're going to see a series of Trump-type discourse coming from the Republican Party, very much like very much like a Fast and Furious movie. You know, I think right now we're at the 9th installment of the Fast and Furious, and I think we've only seen part 1 of a Trump discourse. You know, he's been very public in saying this is not over, the election's not over. So we don't even know what's going to happen next couple months over there, if he's going to try to stop Biden from getting into office some way, somehow, through some legal channel. We don't even know if that's going to happen. You know, but one thing he did prove, and it's like, if anybody's seen the Dark Knight, you know, with the Joker, you know, the Joker was satisfied in being caught by Batman. If you remember the ending, you know, and the one thing he said is, he said, you know, well, look what I did. I turned the city crazy, and I also made the White Knight, which was Harvey Dent, into, the villain, and he did it successfully. Trump was America's Joker, literally. He proved that there is and there should be anarchy, and he sided with an anarchy type, presidential campaign from the start to the end. He segregated that country. If you think of the votes weren't, Biden didn't win by a landscape. Biden won by a few votes. If you really think about it, it would have only taken a few more people to vote Republican for Trump to win. That's scary. That is scary.
Well, I think not only that, but it's almost a reversal of what happened with him and Clinton. He only won by a margin of like thousands of votes in a few states. And it's almost a reversal. This happened this time. But the thing is, not just that, and I'll get back to Warren, not only a lot of people, 70 million people voted for him.
Think about it. Regardless of, good comparison. Sorry, I don't mean to dominate, but if you think about it, there is a lot of bigotry in that country, and it proves through that election. If we're really paying attention, like this is not me throwing shade at anybody on TV. Von Jones, he was on CNN, and he shed tears. He cried. He said, this is, it's finally, this is something that he can look at and say, well, this is liberation. I disagree. This is not liberation. This is not a good feeling. This is, it looks good to have a black woman as a vice president, 100%. But when we think about everything outside of this election, we're going to still see the far right going at the far left. We're going to see moments of violence explode because of this, right? So it's not a, when I say, going back to what I said, I don't know how I feel. It's because this is not a win. It's only a win optically. It's only a win to say, yeah, we have a black woman, black girl magic, amazing. But we still have bigotry that is rampant in that country. And some folks, even if you're listening to CNN, the CNN podcast, which I do listen to, some people were saying, well, quite frankly, I'm just going to vote for Trump just because, or I'm just going to vote for Biden just because. People weren't even informed of why they were voting. That's another issue in itself. So we need to think critically about what this means for that country, not just in politics, but in its way, in its everyday social living. A lot of people are going to end up, more marginalized, regardless of who won. So I think, this is, as much as it's a good thing to see Trump out of office, he did set the tone in terms of how it is okay to be a racist. It is okay to incite bigotry.
All right, Cesar.
Thank you, Dr. Vibe. What can I really say? First of all, I guess for America, this is a good thing in terms of, America as a nation. But to be quite blunt with you, first of all, Trump was not more racist than any other president. He just was more blatant. While someone like Biden is just more of the systemic racism that people are used to, aka bus segregation just as the crime bill. Trump is, the man behind the exonerated five, the birthers, but also, calling, the countries where we come from, shithole countries, quite blatant in your face. Now, that said, how did I feel? Well, first of all, I'm very happy that it was so close because it shows the true face of America once again to the world, 4 years ago, many could have said, oh, America is not ready to elect a woman, even if she's a white woman. But 4 years later, you have not only more people who have voted for him, you have more white women who have voted for him. You also have more Latinos who have voted for him, dedicated to our brothers and sisters who like to think that Latinos are not white when they are white who speak Spanish. That's basically what Latinos mean. That's why you have Afro-Latinos, aka Black Latinos. But me personally, no, I'm very happy. Very happy on a professional basis. Number one, Donald Trump stopping the equity, diversity, and inclusivity trainings in the government. Well, that's going to be repelled. But I'm very happy because at the same time, it's going to put someone like Joe Biden facing the mirror of his contradictions over 40 years of being a politician and so many anti-Black bills and laws that he has to acknowledge and recognize in terms of the damage he created in the Black community. At the same time, for Kamala Harris, for all that we can say Black woman and Black girl magic, I'm sorry, you put it the other way around. If he was a Black man who was known notably for working in crime, for having put in jail so many Black women, and now being VP with white men or white women with such a history, nobody will be talking about Black boy magic. Let's be real, if you want to talk about politics and we want to talk about Blackness. So don't get me wrong, I'm very happy for Kamala Harris in terms of history. For Joe Biden, for many Black people, Joe Biden, they're looking at the Obama family coming back into the White House. But the truth of the matter is this: we need to bring critical reflection, critical thinking, and hold, just as I was saying earlier, accountability and leadership at the very forefront of this administration, even if Biden doesn't make it to 4 years being alive. But we need to hold it to account, because at the end of the day, we need to remember this. The only reason Biden became president is because of Black votes. In the primaries and in the presidential elections, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Atlanta, Philadelphia, it's Black votes that put him there. Black people have to stand up and hold them to account for not demanding, imposing that they get respected and they get more. Very quickly, en français, les amis, la question est: quelles sont nos réflexions par rapport à mardi soir? Et effectivement, pour dire ça de manière très courte, au niveau panafricaniste, il faut tout simplement dire la vérité que là où Trump est un racisme blatant, évident, dans ta face, du genre parler de pays de merde d'où nous venons, Joseph Biden, c'est un racisme systémique, la ségrégation des autobus, mais également la loi par rapport au crime. Et donc, dans ce sens, il faut reconnaître que pour Biden qui soit élu, c'est grâce au vote des Noirs, et donc la communauté noire doit les tenir plus responsables en position de leadership pour avoir des vraies conversations où, non pas qu'on demande, mais qu'on impose le respect.
I wanted to jump back in too. Sorry, Dr. Vibe, you can say what you're going to say. Yeah, I think one thing we also need to talk about is American imperialism here. I mean, Bolivia had very significant elections within the last couple of weeks that not only, of course, re-elected the left-wing party, an indigenous-based party, but also revealed, of course, how America had massively interfered in those elections through the OAS, which is the usual CIA-run, like, destabilizing stuff. And Maduro is actually now free to come back to Bolivia. And I wonder how many Black people are even thinking or knowing about that, when, of course, it's been the global South for a long time that has been carrying the torch of our liberation movements, both across our continent and in Latin America, right, where we're seeing true left-wing movements. And we know that part of the legacy of, say, like Marxism is this unerring belief. And I'd like love a lot of what Karl Marx says. I'm not doing the Marxist like Ben Shapiro thing, but I'm saying that one of the shortcomings, of course, of Marxist thinking, and that was always that Africa was discounted, right? That whenever they thought about liberation and workers, they never really engaged with Africa or the global South or brown people. And that's maintained in like socialist thinking, left-wing thinking among white people. There's always a belief that somehow these movements are going to come out of America, you know, when in fact, no one's paying attention to what happened in Chile or what's happening in Haiti or what's happening in Bolivia. So I wanted to raise that as well, right? That our people are not having conversations about the Bolivian elections. And that's part of this imperial America thing that is also true of Black America and how they, influence us as Black Canadians and our attempts to claw ourselves back from that. I also wanted to add on to what my brothers were saying in terms of this is like dangerous times as well. We've already seen losing Democrats in the House blame defund the police as the reason why they couldn't retake the House. So Black people won them this election. And essentially when they say defund the police lost you my seat, they're saying those Black people lost me the election, right? So we see this open hostility towards, even as the White House is clinched through the Black vote, towards Black popular movements and towards what Black people want. And if they're not even voicing it that way, what they're really saying is you Negroes need to sit down and shut up again and again, as we're always told, right? Like the lesser of two evils. So what you guys want this person in? As somebody pointed out, so now for the next 2 years, it's, Biden's just recovering from Trump, give him time. Then it's we need to take back the House/Senate in the midterms. So shut up because we need to take them back in 2022. Then it's going to be like we need to win in 2024 against, Tom Cotton or Ted Cruz or whatever, awful other person the Republicans come up with. So when are we ever in a position of holding these people to account? And the lesson the Democrats seem to have learned is that this kind of centrist, which is in any other country like right wing, like Biden is a Republican. Like, he wrote the crime bill. He voted for the Iraq War. He used to be known as the senator from MBNA because of his like rulings in favor of deregulation in the banks. He's literally been on the wrong side of every justice issue in the 40 years he's been in office. And Kamala Harris has also been rehearsed here, did not prosecute Steve Mnuchin, even though her own prosecutors wanted to, put Black mothers in jail for their children's truancy, prosecuted low-level drug users like cannabis users, refused to let innocent people out of jail until she was ordered. You know, like these are all the things. Like, if we had more time, I could go on and on about both of these people record. And of course, the real danger is now not only that everyone feels like our long national nightmare is over, as if Trump 4 years, you know, is like makes up like as if there isn't a long history of racism in the United States, right? B, as people are saying, this whole Black girl magic thing is very silencing. Black men will be accused of misogynoir if you want to critique Kamala Harris. The rest of us will be told that we're in purity politics and give people time and, you know, give her a chance and all of that. And then, yeah, there's obviously, because they have all they do is campaign and have elections. So, you know, this is the whole thing. Like, are they going to even get a stimulus bill? I don't believe they're going to get money to people. Like, I don't even think Biden, they don't have the Senate. They're not even going to get people $600 in a check so that people can have some gas through the winter. So what is actually going to be gained in a Biden presidency? And I think it's actually going to be quite terrible for Black people because sometimes it's easier to organize in that sense. Like, everybody knew how to organize under Trump, and now we're back to the difficulty of organizing under so-called liberal regimes, even though I don't believe that Biden is liberal. The problem we always have in Canada, right? Like, how hard it is for us to organize because we get very caught up in like the Liberal Party is just going to bring us things, right? And so we have a very difficult time actually organizing for liberation. So we know that that's a lot harder, right? And then people, because of the trauma of Trump or whatever, are going to be really silent. We already see the silencing of discourse. AOC had a really interesting interview in the New York Times today, where she's like, my own party are the ones telling me to like sit down and shut up, coming to the media, talking shit about me, and then blaming me because I put my name on my opinion. And then she's like, you know, these, like, they're hostile to me because I want healthcare. And she's like, I'm pretty much only running again to prove that like people want healthcare. I don't know if we saw the Fox exit polls, but you know, where they showed like 71% of Fox viewers want government healthcare. 72% of Fox viewers want a path to citizenship for so-called illegal immigrants. These are not radical ideas. These are mainstream ideas. But two people running, no one supported that. Nobody supported healthcare. Nobody had a good environmental bill. So what it shows us is the elites are completely out of step with what ordinary people actually want. And this election does not change this. It's always, as usual, an election for the donors, for the corporate powers, for the billionaires, the people with money. Kamala had more billionaires like than anybody else. Like, the donors love Kamala. And what does that mean? What are they donating for? They're donating to maintain their pharma profits, to maintain their bank profits, to get their deregulations, to keep evicting people, all of that. You know, so I think we all recognize, obviously, how just like grindingly awful Trump was on that, like daily, just what new thing is happening. But as everyone has raised, and particularly for Black people who need to be bound up in questions about our liberation, not questions about the state, we get very pulled back into this. And like, Black people become part of a democratic machine to elect people that are going to continue to send us to jail. And that becomes where our energies go, instead of in any way towards our own communities and our own work. So that's been well said by everyone else, but I just thought I'd add on to that, and also co-sign the skepticism of Kamala. Since I'm the Black woman right now, I think, Kamala Harris does not speak to any of my needs or wants as a Black woman who wants liberation. And this kind of, I thought we saw the limits of that identity politics with Obama, but I guess we're not done with it, you know? So we're still back to like the color of this person's face somehow makes up for the color of their politics, but we have to care about the color of their politics first.
Okay, Cesar, if you want to come on, we'll make it quick because we have people. We have our two other panelists waiting.
Absolutely. I just want to address this on top of what our sister Elle just said. I want to remind our Black American sisters and brothers that a U.S. election is pretty much a global election. You know, I'm sorry to say this, but from an African perspective, you basically need to know who's going to be training your armies, your police, and who might drop bombs on your head on the innocent villagers, because that is what America looks like. It's not just a matter of the white savior complex, but for me, as I was talking in African groups, one of the things that many of them were saying, they were like, Why is it that people are caring so much about the US elections when there are elections in Ivory Coast, in Guinea, there are protests in Nigeria over police brutality, and so many issues, including in the Caribbean? And Elle said so well, we're talking about Bolivia here, and yet that guy basically pushed aside because of American imperialism. So the importance of our conversation is not just in terms of US elections per se, but that it has an impact on us. Some of you may have heard CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Channel, had a special where they had a white Jewish, I can't remember if he was a doctor, but an educated, good job, whatever you want to call it, liberal professional, who basically was saying how if Trump was reelected, he would be moving to Canada. How many of our sisters and brothers, in the angst and fear of a Trump being reelected, of these white nationalists, aka the FBI deeming the number one terror threat in the US, how many of our sisters and brothers in the US could have that option? It's important to understand the US elections is not just the US elections, it has an impact at a global stage. Très brièvement, frères et sœurs, juste rappeler que ces élections américaines ne sont pas juste par rapport aux États-Unis, elles nous concernent, tout comme le fait qu'en Afrique, les élections telles en Côte d'Ivoire, en Guinée, mais également les manifestations au Nigeria sur la brutalité policière ne prennent évidemment pas la même ampleur, mais il est important de toujours soutenir ce qui se passe par rapport à chez nous, mais qu'on pense ce qui se passe aux États-Unis nous impacte, comme juste ici de l'autre côté de la frontière, au Canada, avec notamment une immigration massive possible. Thank you.
Okay, first half is done. Next half is coming. So if all things go well, we were now going to have two friends join in, Aisha K. Staggers and Jill Jones. There's Aisha. There's Jill. How are we, ladies?
Oh, good.
Hi.
Thank you.
How's your country?
Great.
Our
How's
country's
everything?
fine.
Okay. So what do I want to do? So who would like to go first in regards to how you're feeling about your country, and any comments from what you've heard so far?
I will. I'm gonna tell you this. Had any of you ever had a gun pointed to your head? Do you know what that feeling is like? You know that that fear, that anxiety, and someone has their finger on the trigger and it's cocked, and you don't know if when they release the bullet, what's going to happen. That's what this last 4 years has been like for Black people in this country. That's what this last 4 years has been like. And the relief in seeing Joe Biden win is because we do know who he is. It's not so much, I made the mistake, I want to say, of listening from the very beginning at 5 o'clock rather than just the last 10 minutes when Dr. Vibe asked us to be back. So I'm a little heated by some of the stuff I heard, because it's easy to say things like, I would never speak about what Black Canadians need to do or should feel, because I don't live in Canada. I don't have that lived experience. I live in America every day. And one of the things that I actually tweeted earlier this week after the vote totals came in, and I saw what the numbers were, the popular vote numbers, to see how many white people actually were voting for Trump, the realization came to me that we're never in this country are going to reconcile racism. We're never going to reconcile it, ever. It's always going to be here. It's always going to be part of who we are as a country. And Black people, no matter who we vote for and how we vote, will always have to contend with that. So this whole thing about the lesser of two evils, it's not so much the lesser of two evils. It's who's going to shoot me in the head faster. That's what it's been. And I can tell you right now, I trust Joe Biden more to not pull that trigger than I ever would Donald Trump. Last Sunday, those Trumpers were less than 10 minutes away from my house with their rifles protesting, with their AK-47s protesting. Okay? They are vicious. They shut down the Garden State Parkway, hour and 10 minutes from my house. Shut down the Garden State Parkway. Why? Because they were trying to stop people from voting and from getting to the polls. So whatever you see on TV about how these people are, they are 100 times worse in person. Trump has them 100 times worse. He pulled these people from under a rock. They were already racist, but at least they kept their racism in their house. He pulled these people from under a rock to where they feel like they can just go up in your face with their rifles and call you a nigger, spit in your face, and nothing happened to them. This is the racial climate in this country. This is why Black people in this country are rejoicing over Joe Biden. It has nothing to do with American imperialism. You want to talk about American imperialism? Let's talk about how American imperialism is being perpetrated on Black people in this country. Okay? Because it's not just what we're doing outside of the country, it's also what's being done in this country to people of color. And so when I listened to what was happening, when I listened to the conversation before we came on, I was like, wow, this just doesn't, this is the distorted, I just see how America is seen, and it really is a distorted perception. And the things about bots and the misinformation is real. You're getting the same information from bots that our people are getting here before they go to vote. The crime bill, I was here and alive when that crime bill went through. And let's be clear, the Black community wanted it. I remember what Broadway in New York City looked like before that crime bill. The reason they did the crime bill was because our community was asking, please, the crack epidemic was so bad. It was so bad. So if you weren't here during that time, you really don't have a background to speak on that. Kamala Harris with the drug offenses, she was giving some of those people, a gift. Either you go on a drug charge. Yes, Elle, she was giving them a gift. Either you go on this drug charge here and you get rehab and you get this time and it's not a felony, it's a misdemeanor, which doesn't stay on your record and you can eventually get your voting rights back, or you have to get discharged, which is a felony, and you can't ever vote again. So it's really about what you know. It's about the experience of being here. And I just got to say, my feeling about this election is really just a relief, a sense of, I can breathe again for a second, okay? A second. But Monday, the real work starts.
Right.
Can I ask you this very quickly, Aisha?
Yes, you can.
If I say,
Can I say something?
Okay, no, I'd like Jill to
Yeah.
speak, and then we can bring everybody. I want to make sure Jill gets something to say, and then we can get everyone in.
Hi,
So go ahead,
everybody.
Jill.
So I was being asked like what my feelings are about the election. I'm generally an optimist. I believe that this is a time for people to reflect and stop trying to put across their own social dominance. I feel that we have the young people in the woke movement who want to get their points across. I raised some kids in the woke movement now. I'm one of those parents who opened up the door, as far as I feel my generation, with our kids. We gave you all everything. We gave the young people, we made sure this is fair, this is equal, this is how the world is supposed to be. The vision was placed, regardless of what you think about our racial issues in this country. Living in New York City, full of tons of people of all dimensions, diversity, whatever, I feel that our children saw the world in a very different way. And most kids in America do, especially in the urban cities, because everything overlaps. This one has a Jewish mom, this one has an Arab father. It really overlaps. So there was never one absolute rule for everything. So when you bring into the fact for all of these people in my standing to see racism rear its ugly head, I also grew up in Ohio, which near Waynesville, which was like the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan as a child in the 60s. And you all still don't know what it's about. You don't know what it's like to see a cross burning or see store owners with their stores all burnt down, the Jewish ones because they were Jewish. Then also going to school and interacting. I wish I could have been so woke, but it was about surviving. It's about learning how to get along with people. It's about listening. I've seen people who've been, my own grandmother was a racist till the end, the day she died at 99. I thought God kept her here on this planet just to see if she would change her heart, and she never did. Even having half Black grandchildren didn't matter. Even having another grandchild who, my brother, who is Japanese, Hawaiian, and Italian, didn't want anything to do with that. Racists are a very interesting people. They're not just a group, they're also individuals with different types of prejudices and different biases that they will swing back and forth like a gate, like a door. But in order to see this country change, I've also seen other people change miraculously from the day they hold their new grandchild who is of mixed race. I think that we've lost. I also see a lot of identity politics in the woke movement, because I also see a lot of times light-skinned people like me pander more to the Black side because there's a shame associated with being white. I also feel that having a white mother versus a Black father and the opposite raise two very different sets of mixed children. We have very, very deep problems. I can only overcompensate for people. I lived in France for a while. I've lived in London. I've seen different dynamics of the different racial dynamics. And for the most part, I thought the British were dealing okay with things. We obviously had to deal with, Thatcher. In France, I was living in the 18th, primarily Arab and African section, owned a house there. And there's a lot of things we could say culturally about people, but I was there when, the police shot an Algerian boy in an interrogation. I was there in the city when that happened, right in his face during the interrogation, and it had something over a pack of cigarettes. This is not something new. And it begs me right now to wonder how many people are sincere about moving it forward and listening to all sides, as opposed to clout chasing, making careers. Should I go on the GOP? Can I be famous? Can I make this happen? We're in a very interesting time where names are being made and careers are being made as well. So when we talk about what happened with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and it's all in hindsight, and we've been giving a lot of vocal platform to the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings from the academia region who are all so balanced and seem to have it all so figured out about what happened. Sometimes just philosophically, you have to let shit just be for a minute and look at it, make a move, but you cannot always look at people as if they're always in a group identity. People are individuals. And I think that's part of the problem. I was taught to be an individual, not a follower, but you all are growing up in an era where you're taught to follow. Follow on Instagram, follow on this, follow. I was never taught that. It was kind of looked down upon. Leadership was really important, but everybody now follows. The interesting thing is that white people, Trump tapped into something inside of them, a pain and shame, all of it. But if we keep demonizing, yes, they have emboldened themselves. They certainly have. They found a group. Lonely people found groups. We isolate so many people because of race, because of this, because of COVID. We're doing it. We perpetuate it even more. And I think what we're going to discover, I saw one of your shows about the N-word and the teacher and all of this and everybody reclaiming. Yeah, the people who called everybody a nigger came back and said, no, that's our word. And we're going to let you feel the heat and the weight of that word. Like, we're going to really make you feel that it never has been a word of affection, as Ice Cube wants everybody to believe while he's trying to sell a batch of records. But I also think that to go after Kamala, who too is a biracial woman raised in a different setting, different influences, different things culturally, to demonize her over a crime bill in 1994, I don't know. The crime bill wasn't solely about incarceration. The crime bill banned assault weapons, which the Republicans reversed again after 94. 19 military-style weapons were banned, which are normal here. It's normal. I don't know how people hunt with a military-style weapon. What are you eating if you're killing like a deer like that? I don't believe in hunting, but that's that. The death penalty, it came on the heels of Timothy McVeigh, who blew up a building with a bunch of children in Oklahoma. Drive-by shootings were going on, large-scale drug trafficking. Domestic abuse and firearms was really huge here. We needed the Violence Against Women Act. Why? Because for 15 years, Joe Biden did try to pass that. He did. I've been staunchly, hugely involved in violence against women, and the Republicans would never pass it. So you're right. The Senate has always had a different agenda. And as far as to say Kamala got her money from donors and people who are in the pharma world, can I just say, yes, these places have too much of a monopoly and too much of a control. Everything. It's called capitalism. So what do you want? I mean, here's another situation here. I would love to have it a different way, but it's not going to work the way AOC wants it to work. And AOC is not leaving politics, the game. I love her, but she's young. And she just the other day said she was going to run for a higher office. So don't believe. She's been in DC enough to know how to be schooled, and she's been trained. But to think that everybody in America has a liberal belief system, I'm not that liberal. I'm not that left or right. I just want things to be kind of cool and chill. But to push us in a direction that this is the United States, we may be divided, but not all of us want to be insanely liberal. We have to respect everybody and have a little bit more tolerance. And I feel that with Trump, with Bush, every time the Republicans come on, you'll see the pattern. It's to destroy. Democrats come in, clean it up, and then it goes back to hell again. It's a pattern, and it's great for calling out patterns. But to just completely try to throw America into this whole everything now they're in, and now are we going to just trash that? Give people an opportunity. No, it's not perfect, but neither are you.
All right. So we got everybody back. So who, Al, did you?
I think Warren should go first because he hasn't had as much chance to speak, and then I'll go after him.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny that every time I come on here, everybody thinks I don't say as much until like I guess I go on my rants, and people are like, "Oh, he's going on his rant again." Aisha, did I say your name right? Aisha, thank you. I didn't want to mispronounce your name. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for mentioning what you mentioned. Jill, you as well. Here's the deal. I don't know both of you. I don't know your lived experiences. I am Canadian. I am not American. I visited once, maybe twice, but that is it. So I don't know, what you're going through right now after the election or even prior to the election. So I want to demonstrate my vulnerability there. But, one of the things that I will never come to understand is, why do we get comfortable in white supremacy? Why do we, and this is not a question that it should be answered right now, but these are questions that I think about. Why do we get comfortable?
Well, you're saying that we're comfortable. Is that where this is? Are you saying that?
Hold on. First off, I didn't accuse you, nor am I accusing
But where
Aisha.
does the thought process come from saying, why are we comfortable in that?
I said, why are we? I didn't say you.
As a people?
I'm just wondering how your train of thought got there, but because obviously you thought that when we were talking.
One at a time.
Here's the thing, right? I didn't come here for a battle. I came here for an intellectual conversation. If we're not going to be able to do that respectfully, then I can just be quiet and not say anything. I have no problem doing that. You can.
It was just a simple question.
I'm gonna stop right there. So go ahead. I ain't got nothing to say. Go ahead. I am not.
Okay, basically.
I'm not doing that.
No, that's fine. That's fine. All I want to say is that there's more to us in the African diaspora. You even if they want to break apart the Hispanics here, we're all a part of the African diaspora. I don't care if you're from Puerto Rico, Chile, Bolivia, everybody is it. And that's where it's got to be going.
Judge,
now,
okay.
but this is not coming easy to the rest of the world.
Let Jill finish, please.
This is not, this is something that, I was just listening to your train of thought because I could tell you where my train of thought comes from. When you're talking, I'll go, that made me think of that too. We're not comfortable with this. Are you kidding? But when it comes to hiring practice, how everything is impacted, getting an apartment, getting a house, getting everything. Somebody said that most people want universal health care here. No, they don't. That's the ironic thing, because that goes back to the British cultural thinking of, we're going to muddle through. We pick ourselves up by the bootstraps. Do you know that actually sticks with some white people here? It really does. It's just, there are cultural plots of stuff dropped all over the place here. America does not have one culture. That's the problem. And maybe it's a great thing that they don't, but that's where some of these things come from. That's all I really kind of have to say. And as far as a stimulus bill, I mean, all we're asking for is, we can't have an economy if they don't get COVID together. I'm sitting here watching Boris Johnson is doing rapid testing today in Liverpool, where some of my family live. Really, it's important. Maybe we could finally have that. If we have to use the pharmaceutical division and industry to do it, so freaking be it. It just happens to be the way it is. But what you guys are really talking about, a few of you, is just the reconstruction of capitalism. And I'm all for it. But you can't throw out the baby and the bathwater all at the same time. And I do respect everybody's opinion on this, but we are all in the diaspora for the most part. Now the recognizing is, but here's the thing, go ask a Black African American here, do you know what's happening in Nigeria? They say they don't know. They don't care. And that's something else that we have to get to in our country here, because we have, even Black Americans have a little uppity something about that too. We really do. We don't know what's going on in the rest of the world, and we don't seem to care.
Okay, before you go out, Jill, okay, Elle, then Aisha.
So I think that's our point, Jill, and thank you for saying that, because first of all, please don't think that we're not highly critical of Canada. I think there's very much a thing that happens with Canadians where, smug Canadians, we always call it, right? This idea that Canadians sit there and go, look at those Americans. Please don't think that we do that on this show. We come in every week and we critique our own government and how Black people are treated in this country. And one of the things we talk about a lot is how Black people don't even have a voice in Canada. It's like we don't even exist. And like in Canada, white people think that Black people only exist in the United States, and we don't even exist in our own communities. Where I'm from in Nova Scotia, we have the first Black settlement in North America, period. The first Black contact in Americas, period. And like, we don't even, in our communities have been here and went through segregation. So I know that you only know sometimes you only know the Canadian mythology that our white country exports to you, right? We had a cross burning here in Nova Scotia. We have nooses on the walls of our schools. We have Confederate flags flying around this province because of the American influence on our province. And we've been fighting to ban Confederate flags, right? We have, I'm sure if I say Mi'kmaq lobster fisheries, you guys would know what I'm talking about because Canadian news doesn't get out of Canada. But we have a white supremacist war going on in my province right now where like crazy white fishermen are burning Indigenous shit to the ground.
Yeah, the Indigenous people.
In their cars, burning it. So we do not think that white supremacy and the problems of dealing with it are like something in the States and we get to sit here as Black Canadians and be like, oh, look at them. You know, like that is not a position I would ever take. I am so highly critical of Canada and in particular how Black Canadians and Canadians in general tend to look at the States and act like we don't have those problems. So please don't think these comments are coming from that position. But the position they are coming from is that, like it or not, America has a huge outsized influence on the politics of the world for exactly the reasons I said. You don't have to know who my police chief is. I know everything about your electoral count in Pennsylvania. And my police chief went and trained in your country at Quantico with your white racist police officer. Right. And then comes back to my province. And I'm not saying racism originated in the States because we have enough of our own racism, but, you know, trains with your racist cops to bring even more racist policies into our country. And that's why we have to care. So no, we don't have your experiences. And I don't think anyone was trying to say like Black people shouldn't be relieved or happy. We all celebrated, for example, when Obama was elected. But then we had 8 years where our countries also got bombed. I have Grenadian family. Your troops from America showed up on our doorstep. They came into our country. And like, so we have to look at this as a global thing. So I think at the beginning, we were all making our comments saying like, we're also glad Trump is gone. I don't think anybody is arguing that Trump was like not a completely, everything from ridiculous to frightening to like dangerous. You know, we get all of that, but it's also like, as we go through the next 4 years and as the building of what is happening, we cannot as Canadians turn away from that because it is in our communities because of your country and what happens. It influences our politicians. And again, racism is not created in the United States. We have our homegrown racism. And it's a ridiculous commentary when people in Canada want to pretend that Trump invented racism. We have our own Reform Party. We have our own people in Alberta stockpiling guns. We have our own history of settler colonialism, our own genocide of Indigenous people, our own slavery that took place here in my province. Everything like this, you know, took place in like my province had the first race riots in North America recorded.
Right.
We had enslavement for over 250 years. We had segregation well into the 1950s and the last segregation closed in the 80s in my province. So like the people that, you know, are around, like our parents and grandparents went through these things, you know, so please don't take, I just don't want you to ever think we're saying like, doing that awful thing Canadians do, like where it's like, look at the States. Our country is just as much as a white supremacist shambles. But that's exactly why it's important to talk now, because it's not just Trump. And we don't have Trump. We had Harper. And we have to deal with like Trudeau idiocy and like, you know, his blackface, even though he's a and even though he's held up as like the great hope of the West, you know, Trudeau, the only like, so when you guys had Trump, we were told that we were so lucky to have Trudeau. Then it turned out he like wore blackface, you know, and like hasn't done anything to help us as Black people other than pass a couple of budgets that we've been like quite critical of. So I think that's where we're coming from, is saying as Black people, not Black Americans specifically, not Black Canadians specifically, but Black people who live in this world, in a white supremacist world that is global. That is all.
It is global. It is global.
How do we?
I'm not going to do
right. All right. So Elle, I'm just gonna cut. So I'm gonna go Aisha, then Cesar.
I'm not going to do oppression Olympics, obviously, because we're all descendants of slaves, and we've all dealt with the trauma left behind by the transatlantic slave trade. When Warren asked the question of white supremacy, I was asking for clarification specifically, and I'm still going to ask you for that because white supremacy in the United States plays differently depending on the region you're in this country.
Aisha, your audio is a little bit funny. It's just now we can't hear. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So Warren, I was going to ask you for a little bit more specificity on specificity on that when you were talking about the white supremacy, because we are a regional country more than anything. So how white supremacy plays in the North, where I live in Connecticut, is very different from how it plays in South Carolina, where I used to live. But what I get what Elle was saying. And Dr. Vibe, can you put the screen back so I can actually see who I'm talking to?
Okay.
Because I like to see
Yeah.
who I'm talking to. Thank you.
No problem.
I get what you're saying. I think for me, what upset me more than anything was that I only came in, I came in, I missed the first like 5 minutes of the conversation. So when I came in, it did at first feel like a mess.
Aisha,
And
your audio's gone funny
yeah,
again.
hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so my speaker wasn't, my thing was okay. Okay, so it felt like America bashing at first, but even more than that, it was to understand living here. It's not just and I get that,
Aisha,
but when we look,
we're having the problem again. So
you're
Can you
still
try
having the
without
problem?
headphones? Maybe?
yeah, we're still having the problem.
I
So
think it's your headphones.
or your something's going on with your mic or whatever.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I look to Canada, and when a lot of Black Americans look to Canada, it's kind of disappointing because we look at Black Canadians a little bit differently than I think you think we do. Remember, in a lot of Black people, when they left for freedom, left to go to Canada. Okay, so they were leaving America to go to Canada, and so we look at Canadians. To hear the bashing coming from Canada when we look to Canada for safety was kind of harsh, and a lot of us still were thinking, "I'm going to Canada for safety if Trump gets reelected." We felt of it as a place of safety and refuge for us. So to hear that, it was kind of like, wow, this is the place I was thinking of going to if the the plan, of Biden winning hadn't worked. And then it's like, oh my gosh, this would be a hostile place. But then I had to remember, I listened to what you were saying and realizing that your perception of America is largely influenced by media, how media portrays us. And this is our fault as Americans in general, is because, and believe me, we are always telling our media, stop portraying the country this way. Stop portraying the country this way, because it gets out and people really believe that it's like this. But just like you all, our daily experiences with racism are usually the microaggressions. They're largely the microaggressions. I'm a writer here. So anytime I write something people don't like, or if I make a comment on Twitter that people don't like, I get nasty DMs. They're horrible. And so I know that the racism exists, and I feel it daily. And so we talk about the larger things that we can do to combat racism in this country. I know that we can't do them. Why?
Okay, Aisha, I'm gonna have you stop because your audio's gone funny again. So I'm gonna have you hold for a second here. Cesar, I'll have you next.
An exchange, sisters and brothers. Absolutely excellent. First of all, Aisha, thank you for what you were saying in the beginning. I'm not going to say that it's humbling in the sense of Black Canada was saying something wrong, but in the spirit of what Elle was saying, you can trust us 100% that we are just as critical of our government. And there's a video of me, even just earlier in the summer, reminding Justin Trudeau that I am not one of those who forgave him for the blackface, even despite some millions to the Black community. Also, for Jill, enchanté de savoir que tu as vécu en France. I've lived in France. And I believe Jill can absolutely confirm something here. She lived, I understood you lived in the 18th, 18e arrondissement. My friends, the postcard images of France, the Champs-Élysées, Eiffel Tower, in contrast to the realities of Barbès, Château Rouge, I am telling you, if he doesn't say Paris, you could think it's somewhere in the USA or in Brazil, and our Black sisters and brothers are being treated as bad as in the US. That's why even today, just as we say George Floyd and Black Lives Matter in the US, we are saying Abdurrahman Abdi in Canada, and we are saying Adama Traoré in France. We are Black first, no matter the skin tone, no matter whether we are descendants of slavery or colonization. As a Pan-Africanist, I want to remind all of us, we are in 2020, 100 plus years ago when Pan-Africanism was created by Caribbeans. It was England that was the number one power in the world, and as such, the center of Pan-Africanism was in London. We come here today. I am the one who was born in Africa, where in 1960, Patrice Lumumba was murdered, notably by the of Ike, President Eisenhower. I am born in a country, Cameroon, that suffered a genocide that is not spoken of from 1955, the year of birth of my father, to 1970-72, where our leaders got killed. Hundreds, up to 300,000 people got murdered by France with the okay of America. Are all connected. At the end of the day, whether it's Jill and Aisha walking in Ottawa, Halifax, or Toronto, or me, Warren, or Elle walking in Mississippi, New York City, or California, we would all be victims of systemic racism one way or the other. When I'm in America, I don't speak English on the street, I only speak French. When I'm in France, I only speak English on the street. Guess what? I still get treated as a Black person, whatever privilege one can see. So the thing I just wanted to bring, and Jill, before we take you, the little thing I just wanted to remind is that US elections, Aisha, you were so right, and Jill, you are absolutely right. I knew the 1994 crime bill, it was actually part of the defense of Bill or Hillary in saying that it's the Black community who asked us for this. Absolutely, I knew about that part. In 2008, I worked for the Obama elections. I lived and stayed in Detroit, Michigan, and I was part of that international corpus of volunteers. We were 2 Black people from Ottawa.
Oh, wow.
Hello. Absolutely. So I was there. I'm not trying to claim whatsoever that it gave me that better insight, even if I have family in the States, notably. But never forget, what goes on in the US has an impact on all of us worldwide. When I say worldwide, Jill, please, I take you as my witness. In France, where I grew up, how is it that whites in power tend to describe Black people, to call Black people when they want to weaponize them and use them and insult them? They don't say les noirs, they say Black, as if they're American Blacks. This is something you have to understand. So Aisha, my sister, I've had that gun pointed to my head, and guess what? It was by cops because they suspected there was some drug dealer in Montreal driving a white Cadillac. But at the end of the day, I don't live in the US. I am not African American. I'm not descendant of slavery. But ultimately, as Elle said so well, any of us on the 4 corners of the world, including China and coronavirus, we are treated, excuse my language, first and foremost as niggers.
Yeah.
I will stop this for a moment, and I won't translate to make sure that everybody gets to speak.
And it's interesting too. I think because to understand the conditions that we're living in, a lot of us, largely Black people in this country, we've been home for 8 months. Okay, we're staying in the house, 1, because there is an uncontrollable pandemic, and 2, because of all of these mass killings. And there's a lot more than just George Floyd. And the ones that you all have been seeing, because of those, and because of these militias popping up all over the place. So here we are. It feels like we've just been confined. And this whole thing with Joe Biden being elected, on another hand, it feels like some of these people are going to go home.
Well, can I just say one thing? I mean, here's the thing for me about Black Americans. And I think when I heard everybody talking, I'm like, you're really investing a lot if you're going to invest in African Americanism, this new activism that's been activated, because they did it before in the 60s. My family, people were involved, and it peters out because it's so easily bought and sold in America. The loyalty to it. When this is no longer a trend, and then you have stupid celebrities that come along and diminish the fight. And this is my biggest concern, that why I say the African diaspora has to everybody be involved on a global heightened alert is because the fortitude here, the only people who are pushing it through are the Black women. The men are disappointing in our activism route here in America. I find the women are relentless, persevering.
Yeah, I gotta go, man. I gotta go.
Okay.
I mean, it's just the way I feel here in America. Is he American?
No.
Oh, I mean, I just feel that we have some disappointing leadership, but the women are really knocking it out of the park. And I don't know if that's just because of the symbolism of Shakti empowerment. This is like, if you understand Vedas, all of this is sort of working in the same movement. France, you're absolutely right, has a long way to go. Just like here, though, because it's capitalism tied into all of this. And this is what we're unraveling because there's a couple of fights here, the imperialistic view, but also that money. You know, when I used to go to Italy and France, and you go to people's houses, and they've had those houses for like a long ass time in their families. I'm like, damn, that's crazy. And that the fact that I can name all the rich families in America and not one of them got their money legally. I mean, not one. So I just feel like the movement, Pan-Africanism, cutting through all this is very important. Yes, it's important you guys speak about what's going on in Canada. We don't know. Most people don't know. It's like, but it needs to be everybody moving together. Better films, better castings, better music. You know, we can hardly get radio. You know, the only thing people want to talk about with music is Drake because he's Canadian.
That's
Justin
the only
Bieber.
Canadian.
Or, you know, like, it's crazy. Sorry to be so frivolous, but I don't mean to be.
So I'm just jumping back in here. We've gone past the time I asked all of you to participate. Are we still good? No,
Yeah.
Are we
I'm
still good
good.
with time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute for a while.
I would like Aisha to be able to try and finish her thoughts.
Yes.
We can get her back because we didn't really.
I feel like we just started.
Okay, go ahead, Aisha. Hopefully we got you good this time.
I was gonna say that I really hope that what was his name? That left?
Warren.
I really hope that he wasn't offended by the blackmail comment, because it is, unfortunately, in this country, it is true. If he goes to look at if he hashtags or does a search on Twitter, and he goes and he
Okay, Aisha, I'm gonna have you stop again. Your audio is still bad.
You still can't hear me?
It's choppy, everyone. Statically. It's staticky.
We can hear you when you lean in. Is it your headphones?
I took the headphones out, so maybe if I lean in, it's better.
No, it looks crazy. Yeah, like it's good when you're leaned right in.
Yeah, okay, so better. I'll stay leaned in.
Okay, lean in.
So, okay. So if he searches ashy Twitter, he will go and find an abundance of what do I call them? Insecure Black men who are literally the ones who voted, that 18% that voted for Trump. They're the ones who are really they feel threatened by the Black women who did all the work. They don't like it, and you read their comments, and it's things like, oh, they hate to hear that Black women that Black women are doing the work. They hate to hear any praise heaped upon Black women. So their male fragility pushed them toward Donald Trump. And in a lot of numbers, and think about this, Ice Cube got upset when Black women were getting all of the praise in the community. So that's why he comes up with this platinum plan and nothing but Black men who advised him on it. And when someone asked
Right.
about, well, what's the plan for Black women? And he's like, well, y'all come up when we come up. But that's been the problem. That's been the problem. You know, we have Black Lives Matter because Black women took the reins to come up with this organization, Black queer women at that. And that offends a lot of Black men. Black men have issues. A lot of Black men have issues, particularly in America, with the LGBTQ community. And that is something that gets on their nerves. So between that and between a lot of the misogynoir against Black women, that got that 18% for Trump. And until our community deals with it, we're going to still see that. And the other thing too is that for a lot of Black men, the proximity of them to white men, to power, is an addictive drug. They want that proximity to white men in power
Because they
gives them power.
They call it social dominance orientation. And it comes from like, I have to have this purse. This is the brand. Because remember, we're a huge consumer group in America. Black people buy, once marketing and advertisers realized just how much we can generate, it was ridiculous. It opened up so much. I worked in advertising, so I know about the acculturated African American, the acculturated Asian, and all of them. That's another area that needs to be investigated with is advertising, because that's where a lot of the racial stereotypes and tropes still exist. And even when they try to make it, oh, this is a new thing, we've got a new Black mixed family selling Cheerios, it still has something very divisive happening, and it needs to really be observed and taken apart. I think that with this social dominance orientation is the worship that Americans have, white and Black, for people who are in a higher social status and hierarchy. Would they worship celebrity, money, all of the value systems? Where are they? And I think it's completely confused. Yet we have young people in the woke movement, which I adore, because that part of it is green, sustainability, doing things, going back to that's a beautiful part of this. But we still have a lot of reluctance with people who are incredibly materialistic. And you're right, they do them if Puffy said it, I'm gonna do it. If Beyonce did it, yeah, it's like, it's got to stop. I'm ready for a post-celebrity world. I'm ready for just good people to do great things, not because they're trying to sell to me, because I find a lot of it to be very disingenuous.
Okay.
It's just my
And part of
Go ahead, Aisha.
part of what's going on too in America that I think it's all over, but I think that our people are more susceptible to it is and I'm talking about all of America, but Black people especially is following stan culture. And Jill and I talk about this all the time, is how do we teach our community to get post-celebrity and look at the people who are in our communities doing the work as the celebrities, the stars in the community, like they used to be. Like back in the days when my mother was a kid going to school, and in the church, the teachers were the celebrities in the community. They had they had the front seat in the pews at the church, and these were the people you looked up to, the pastors and the lawyers in your community, the people who the person who was like the person who got the promotion to foreman, who worked really hard to get that promotion, like that James Evans could never get on Good Times.
Mhm.
And so these are the people that we uplifted in our communities, right?
Okay. So I just want to get Cesar, you wanted to say something.
I'm pretty much the only male now on the panel. But I'm not going to assume to Brother Warren leaving either because of time or because of the comment on gender. However, and notably for having addressed Kamala Harris, the comparison if he was a black man, etc. I want to pay tribute to the fact of Sarah Onyengo's comment by the fact that there are so many brothers who are actually doing good work. When I say good work, you will absolutely, you may have noticed, I pay tribute to our sisters who are involved. The African spirituality which I represent here in terms of Kemet, Kepri, is one where it's not behind a great man, there's a great woman. That is Semitic Western ideology. African spirituality is that a great man walks with a great woman to do great things for the community. We must not fall to one of the pitfalls of integration that worried Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and other African leaders along Frantz Fanon, where in order to try, as Jill was talking in terms of social dominance, in order to try to climb and get close to the white, Arab, Jewish, Asian men, we divide ourselves further in order to say, well, look at me. I got a PhD. I have a white wife. I have the nicer car, and I live in the nicer neighborhood with the picket fences. We have to be careful of, I don't know if it's necessarily the reality because it's not in my social circle, but too many, notably on social media, fall into this gender war. A gender war which, Aisha, I will absolutely agree with you, far too many brothers tend to be misogynistic indeed, but at the same time, misogynistic and homophobic. But at the same time, we have to be able to take the opportunity of this election, the new climate that it can create in terms of more activism, more conversation, to not fall into a false post-racial world that unfortunately Obama gave us in 8 years. We must dare to bring ourselves together, as Jill was saying, Pan-Africanism in terms of Ubuntu, I am because you are. Jill is lighter skinned than me, but she's a black woman. Notice what she said. I did not know she had spent time in France, but I recognize what she said. And at the same time, we must be able to also address the fact that there are also, and as uncomfortable as it can be as a conversation, and again, I'm the only black male here, there are also sisters who fall into this whiteness of power and as such become enemies of the community. We must be able to not fall for a Biden-Harris in terms of, the bad, evil Trump is gone, now we can breathe easier. No, we have to keep standing and working harder to bring too many of our lost brothers and sisters together to create stronger communities. I always say it, the black community is not poor, it just doesn't manage well its wealth. Just as we are not lost, we just need to dig in harder to find back our roots like Kunta Kinte, and as such to rise and truly stand to speak face to face with power and impose our respect. In New York City, one of the things I noticed, and I always remind this to people, police shoot black and Latinos. Why don't they shoot the Jews and the Chinese? They're also there. They don't shoot them disproportionately, but somehow they always seem to find the black and Latinos faster to kill.
I think one of the things that's interesting is I'm not so much Nova Scotia, right? Because we, again, have a really ancestral, historic population of Black people that have been here for generations, many of whom came up from being enslaved people in the States, like in the War of 1812 and 1776. That's where a lot of our Black population comes from. So I'm accepting Nova Scotia, but in a lot of the rest of Canada, a lot of Black people have a migrant experience. And I'm wondering if that's also one of the sort of tension points that started in this conversation where Black Canadians aren't necessarily super invested in Canada because we're also like, well, this is my home country, like my parents came straight out of this country, or I was born in Somalia, and so I'm hearing also in some of your initial hurt is that Black Americans are like, we are invested in this country through our history of enslavement here, through building up this country, through not getting our due, and then this critique that comes in about America cannot help but also be like directed at Black people, but like, why are Black people being put under this critique when Black people already slaved for this country? So I think there's a maybe different level of investment for some Black Americans in America, whereas like, I'm like, I wasn't born in Canada. Like, I don't really care, like Canada doesn't mean that much to me, whereas I think sometimes Black Americans, and that's not a critique, I'm saying I think it's a different, perhaps emotional investment. When it comes to moving to Canada, I also wanted to point out that, and this is my Canada critique here, that we had my sisters in Winnipeg, like Manitoba. And so we had a lot of people coming up from the States, like across the border. And there's a lot of stories of people that came up during Trump, specifically African Black people that were coming into Manitoba in like -30 weather, like walking through snow in their chests. And people in Manitoba were locking their barns so that like these Black people coming in to flee Trump could not survive. And there's all these cases of people that lost their fingers and toes and arms and legs trying to get into Canada. And Canada, until a few months ago, would not cancel the safe third party agreement. So even though Trump was like, and we were very invested in being like, oh my God, like, look at this horror show that they have, like they have Trump, like, but then when it came time to like Black people are actually fleeing this country, we were like, nah, we have a safe third party agreement. So if you land in America first, you don't have the right to come to Canada. You can't claim refugee status. So it's like a lot of cosmetic that happens in Canada when we look at the States and say, they're so bad, look at them, look at their racial problems. But then when it came time to like let Black Americans in, like we weren't trying to do that. So like any Black people talking about you want to come to Canada, just understand that Canada has the harshest immigration laws like in the world. We don't let people in. We didn't even let in Black people until the 1960s, like in any kind of numbers. And we still have some of the most restrictive immigration laws in the world. Like if you're German, you can get in, but like if you're Black, if you're not like a PhD in science, like good luck coming here. And that's part of Canada's racism as well. So I sort of think that's interesting. The last thing I'll say about celebrities, it's like I was all into that discussion, is that's why I also think we have to limit the ways we think of politicians as celebrities, right? Like politicians are not celebrities, they work for us. Like we are their bosses. And more in this stand culture that we've all identified, politicians are also coming under that. And then I think that's part of like we can disagree about Kamala's policies or whatever, right? And like you're reading of her policies versus ours. But I don't think ever any cause, whether that's MP Selena here or like whoever, to ever look at our politicians and be like, yes, queen. Like, I think we always have to be saying like, what are you doing? What are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing today? Like, this is what you did great, but like, how are you keeping that going? And I think one of the dangers we see is that politicians are increasingly falling into this stand culture. This is like all over the world, right? And like, so from my point of view, like the first Black city councillor in 20 years in Halifax is someone I have deep friends with. I worked with him for years, but he knows that when he's sitting on the police board, if he's on that police board and I'm there, he's getting it from me, until like when we're talking about police funding. Now, if somebody else comes at him, I'm going to be like, stop being so racist to Lindell. Like he takes a ton of racism. He's a great guy. But when he's sitting on the police board, it's my job to go in there and be like, yo, what are you doing? Why didn't you check this? Why are you not running this complaint? And I think that's actually the attitude we as Black people need to continually hold against the state and against anybody, because like whether it's our police boards or municipal councils or provincial or whatever state, and then federally, like we always have to just, I think, be like 24/7, like going out and critiquing everything, because every time we relax as Black people, white supremacy works 24/7, and they're always finding a new way to take our energy. And the last thing I wanted to say on Black women was like, I saw, like Stacey with Georgia, which, obviously is like, wow, Georgia can actually go Democratic. And then I saw everybody trying to be like, well, it's not like Stacey Abrams, like, led an army. Like, they just, and I'm like, y'all can't give Black women credit for shit. How do you think you got Georgia? Like, and whatever I think of the election, you got Georgia from Black women. That is like abundantly clear. That is the reality. It's obviously Stacey Abrams who led that, and nobody wants to let Stacey Abrams have that. They're all like, oh no, they passed a policy. I'm like, who pushed that policy? Who forced that? Who? It was a Black woman. So yeah, people can't let Black women have shit. I'm like, Black women won you this election, and whatever you think of that, it's Black woman, 100%. And like anyone who's celebrating should be turning around and saying, what do we owe Black women? So I find it really interesting that even in this moment, you see people just trying to rip that away. Like, so when it's a Black woman's accomplishment, it's like, oh, no, it's not Stacey Abrams. I'm like, yeah, so that's why you got Georgia, not Stacey Abrams. Okay,
91%. That's all I have to say. 91%. If that's not Black women doing the damn thing, then what is it? It's so, like...
I just want to end off, and again, thank you for all staying longer than I hoped you would, but I want to end off with one conversation topic. White women in this election. More voted for 45 than last time. What gives?
No surprise there. I mean, a bunch of them voted for Trump last time too. White women have always been co-oppressors in colonialism, right? And when we talk about, we go like white supremacist men, we stick it all together. white women taught in the missionary schools. Like white women are the ones that went around the countries around the world and were the teachers that told our people we were going to hell and like stripped our religion from us. White women are traditionally the social workers that come and strip our babies out of our homes. Like white women were the missionaries during colonialism as well. White women, like, you know, have been like the WKKK was like the biggest white women's organization in like Indiana, you know, like in Canada, when we look at the famous five that got women the vote, but white women the vote, but were like eugenicists and also believed in sterilizing, you know, defectives, including like immigrants, indigenous people, you know, that's always been the case. So white women have always taken common cause with white men, including lynching of Black people, right? Like the white woman being like, he winked at me, you know, so we know that white women are tied up in white supremacy. And yes, patriarchy is part of that, right? We have to understand that in a lynching, it's like patriarchy in service of white supremacy, right? So the idea that white men have to protect white women from Black men is how patriarchy and white supremacy come together, right? Into the figure of the Black man who is a threat to the innocence of white women, like all the time. Or the idea that brown women need to be saved from brown men by like an army, right? Like this is, we're rescuing you from your awful culture, you know, like your hijab or, you know, your oppressive country, right? That's all part of white supremacy. So
and Trump's rhetoric worked. Trump's rhetoric on characterizing peaceful protests as mobs worked on them. It worked.
Okay.
I have a thing that I think over the years, if we look at the sociology of what was happening, which white women started to feel, there was a really weird vibe in the last 7 years with this self-deprecating humor, self-deprecation of, if you just look at what was running along speed at the same time, white women, television was changing, shows were changing, different characters. You had the emergence of, you have to start looking at everything around those Armenian sisters with the implants and stuff. There was a lot rubbing against with white women. And they're after Real Housewives of Georgia and Atlanta, then I think I would go to my office sometimes and see white women talking about what Nene Leakes said. And it was just kind of like even using the vernacular, everything. And I remembered going, wow, this is going to become a big problem one day, because no one resents it more than another Black woman when a white woman is up in your face going, no, you didn't, girl. And you're just sitting there like going, okay, we have impacted this whole thought, a whole different sector. It was like Dave Chappelle said it the best on SNL the other night. We have this Black experience has opened the eyes for them to even look at themselves at this point, because there is an evolution that got missed somewhere with the evolution of white women, like who they decided they want to be because of the patriarchy, like Elle was speaking about, all of that, dipping your feet in all pools, standing for something but never standing for anything. That's on them, and they got to work that out, because we see it. We've always seen Miss Mamie coming down, being nice, but then don't get in Miss Mamie's way when she tries to win the apple pie contest. You know, that's exactly, you know, I grew up in Ohio. It doesn't really change. It just changes a form.
There's a book that is very interesting that if you ever get a chance to read, it's called White Women and Slave Women. And it talks about the relationship between white women and slave women.
Aisha, we're having trouble with your audio again, unfortunately.
There's a book that you should read. It's called White Women and Slave Women. And it actually explains the relationship just like Jill explained it, and how white women would be so, they'd be, all mint juleps and honey during the day, swinging on their plantation porches. But when the slave master at night would be raping the slave women, the next day she would be all harsh and terrorize the slave woman the next day because of what the husband did, because she couldn't lash out at the husband. And so I think what you're seeing too is a lot of white women being trying to break out and kind of come from under their husband's shadows, and maybe even lash out at their husbands and vote and say, like, you're not the man Trump is.
But some of them like to take space over us. And if it looks like your one-upmanship on them in your office, in anywhere, there is a place. They always have like an ejection button to push it and remind you of how you are felt if they feel threatened. So it is something we have to address. I don't know if it's something in the arts, if we start pushing more of us together. But I'm that's all I have to say. That's my last thought.
And yeah, sorry, Dr. Vibe, I do have to get going.
No problem.
In a
So,
couple of
Elle,
this conversation got so good.
I'll give your final thoughts, and then we'll let you go. And Cesar will be closing it out since he is, other than myself, the only black man on the panel. So I want to save him for last. I'm going to save my brother for last. But Elle, any final comments?
I mean, what we really saw is that Black people can, we come from a lot of different positions. And then what we always see, and we've seen it before on the show, we've had disagreements, is like, as we talk as Black people, we always come to a space of shared agreement. You know what I mean? So we can start in places of disagreement, but we all share this experience. So it's always really interesting to have these conversations. So yeah, the beginning of the conversation where I think people thought we were sort of looking down on America as like, which is like this horrible, the most annoying thing Canadians do is like, oh, look over there. So, we started in that place. And then as we've been talking, we've really been able to uncover together, how white supremacy is affecting us. And then the struggles we have with like dealing with gender relations in our communities, with dealing with, how do we as Black people both like preserve our life and survive on a daily basis and make the decisions we have to make that might, as Aisha said, uncock the gun for a minute versus our long-term strategizing about, what is liberation actually going to look like? We live in the state. So how do we, not everyone's trying to fight against the state, from someone like me who is, obviously we still live here, and like, how do we on a daily basis negotiate that really complex relationship we have as Black people, where we're like, right now we have to deal with the prison and the police and the immigration minister and the school and the people in power, and like, what does it look like to try to inch closer? When do we invest in it? When do we critique it? So these are all, it's really interesting having this conversation and hearing from our sisters who have been, on the ground in the US in ways that obviously we're not, dealing with, like we only saw, we have to see Orange Man, like, on the TV and on Twitter. But, so it was just, I think it was a really good conversation. And I think, Dr. Vibe, what your space consistently shows is that we need more of these spaces for Black people to speak, because we're not a monolith. We don't also share everything. We have like massively different political beliefs, but we do share an existence as Black people. And we do share common experiences with that. And when we talk about it, it's really interesting. So now I'm super into, I'm like, not now. I mean, I wish I didn't have to go, but I actually have to relocate somewhere. Okay. So I have to let y'all go, but this was great. And thank you to our sisters for being so passionate, so forthcoming, giving us a different conversation than we've had, and like, much appreciated.
Take care, Elle.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Cesar, you're going to close, my brother. You got a tall thing to close out, but I know you can do it.
I got to be careful. It seems like I might be stepping on landmines addressing this question of white women. Sorry. Sorry. Can I have like the screen? Yep. I'm going to ask like Aisha. It's just easier than to look at myself talking.
Yes, no problem.
No, the thing is, and I'm really glad you brought the question of white women having voted even more for Trump. So you see, it lies the fact of 4 years ago, they just didn't like Hillary Clinton, despite Trump's misogyny. They voted even more for him. So what did that speak to? Without going through a long history lesson, listen, I'm not a feminist, and this is not an outright criticism of feminism. I support some Black/Afro feminists. Here in Ottawa, I was the spokesperson for Marielle Franco, the movement to support her memory. However, from Olympe de Gouges to Margaret Sanger, and even when we look right now in terms of whether it's the Hillary Clinton of the Rachel Dolezal / Jessica Kruger, the white woman in her fight against the oppression of the white male because of gender and economics, and therefore feminism matters. When it comes to race, the white woman is white first and foremost. This is something important for many of us, all of us, especially our brothers to know, because I read and I hear too many stories, including here in Ottawa, of brothers who have married white women and complain of racism after, aka, why were you blind for all the time of dating and before the baby came? At the same time, we must be able to have a certain critical reflection on white women, because when I think of Emmett Till, 1955, the other reason that started the civil rights movement, it wasn't just Rosa Parks, by the way, but when I think of Emmett Till and how the lie of a white woman can lead to the death of Black people, especially a black man on the four corners of the world, even in Africa and the Caribbean today, I also must say there is a shift that is happening. I'm not going to say to celebrate or to applaud that few white women will become allies, but even for myself, in the situation I had in confronting corrupt Black leadership in the police council, you can have white allies. We educate even whites. An example I give is an example of a white missionary woman, Alice Seeley Harris. Alice Seeley Harris, a white missionary woman who stood up and contributed over 100 years ago to stop Leopold in Belgium, Leopold in Congo, killing 15 million Africans. So when I say this, we don't have white children who are told this. We don't have white children and white women who are told about Marilyn Buck, who stood up with Assata Shakur. So we basically contribute. When I say we, I'm talking society as a whole. It's not Black people doing, by the way, but the society makes it, as Nelson Mandela said. As a Pan-Africanist, some criticize Mandela, but it's important to say this. Mandela said it. Racism kills Black people, but it robs the humanity of whites. And in the 21st century that we live in, a 21st century of changing demographics and downfall of America, where so many whites are fearing the great replacement, me will have white friends and even white nephews. Actually, I do have white nephews. It's important that we enforce the changing of the shift in the education, in the activism, to unveil, to unpack the truth about these histories, so that we stand up taller as Black people, Black men and Black women, and we walk in the spirituality of our ancestors, which was always Black men and Black women walking together in nature. This Western Judeo-Christian Semitic notion of the man above the woman and above nature, it's toxic. It kills humans. It kills the environment. This election, I hope it pushes that change of consciousness, that awakening. Brothers, yes, brothers are doing a good job too. Colin Kaepernick, to give an example, LeBron James being outspoken and having a white female from a journalist from Fox telling him to shut up and dribble. We need to show these role models to our Black boys, teenagers, and adults. Many of them are suffering because they don't have role models. As an educator who go to high schools to present on racism, I see Black youth, but also white, Jewish, and native telling me, Mr. Cesar, we've never seen someone like you. And yet I look like the stereotype until I start speaking. So we need to come together, my sisters and my brothers. We need to come together and to dare challenge the very system and challenge ourselves into what we think is normal, to create a new, healthier, and more balanced normal.
All right. I think we can end on that. And the panelists that are left, they're all shaking their heads. So they're driving the ship. I'm just steering the ship today. I would like to thank Warren. I would like to thank Elle. I'd like to thank Cesar. And especially thank Jill and Aisha, because this is like less than 3 times. I've had them on 3 times in less than a week. So I really, really appreciate them taking their time also to share with us. I thought it was an excellent conversation. I'm speaking that we can do this periodically, because I think should not be a one and done thing. I would also like to thank everyone who watched this live on the replay. Thank you to people like Sarah, Ed G, Kiana. Thank you for watching this. Black Beauty. Thank you so much. And that's not Black Beauty, a judge. It was actually someone who has a YouTube handle called Black Beauty. All right. So just want to make sure I ain't shooting anything or anything like that. All right. I like to just say in passing, I have to actually give big hail up to Cesar, because Cesar said we should have a conversation about the election. I said, oh, we should bring in not Aisha and Jill. And thank you so much for that thought, Cesar. And I'm looking to have more of these, because I think it's important not only for each of us, but everyone around us too. Very, very important to have these important conversations. My name is Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also once a month host conversations for fathers and dads that are co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization, and Dove Men Care. Also like to give a shout out to BIA Media for producing this epic conversation. This is how I close out as always. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Remember to give yourself grace always. And God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. And goodbye. See you next week on Black Canada Talking.